So last week we had built this application where we had a parent component and um, we had the parent component and which was app component in which we had a teacher component. So let me recap really quickly. We had a teacher component, and then inside the teacher component we had a student component, which we created out of a list. So that was the last week, and this week we are going to create a brand new application. So let me delete the created application. Let's create it as a second name. So let me create a new application, which is, let me clear the screen for you guys. And we'll name this application as Rock, Paper, Scissors. And because I had already created while not sharing the screen, I'm going to name it too, but you guys should just name it Rock, Paper, Scissors. And you guys don't need to do it as I do it. If you like to, you can. If you want to focus on the class, that's also okay. I'm going to provide the code for this entire application once we're done with the class. So it is telling us to CD into our newly created application. So we created the rock, paper, scissors application using white and then providing the name of the application and using the template as React. This is we have done in our first class. This is just a reminder and and we go it from there. Now it's asking us to do npm install. Npm install can be done either by typing the entire install or the shortcut for it is npm i. You can do npm i and it works. It does the same job as npm install. And then we run our application. So this week we are going to go one level deep and start to look at the structure of React applications as well, so that we expand our knowledge. So first, let's go ahead and open the create. So we have opened the rock, paper, scissors application in the Visual Studio Code. And at the same time, we are running the application as well. If we look at the run application, it is a simple white preloaded application. We do not want that. So let's go in and go to our app.jsx and for now, delete everything. And and additionally, delete everything from the app CSS as well. Uh, Maybe keep it there. It doesn't hurt really. And just put some text here. We hello world. So now our new application has been initiated. So in the game of rock paper scissors, uh, we typically have two players playing against each other and choosing one of the three options, rock or paper or scissors. And based on those options, whatever they choose, one player wins versus the one player loses. Here we do not have a second player, so we are going to leverage computer as our second player. So the uh, AI slash computer that you can call is going to be our opponent here. So now that basics about game, but when you want to create um, components, it's ideally advised at least at the beginning of your project to have another folder called components. And this folder can be more detailed as well if you are working on a very large application where these components are further divided into smaller logical sections, you know. So you might maybe less an e-commerce website, you might have rather than components, you might have a shopping cart as a top folder, and inside that you might have components. But for us, it's right now not a complex application, so we are going to use simple folder components, and and in that component, let's create our component uh, for displaying that maybe let's say result, who won the game. Did you win um, or the computer win? The computer won, right? So remembering our last lecture, we can create a component while creating the component, we have to ensure that the name of the file and the name of the function that we create matches. And we are going to use, for the most part of this course, we are going to use ES6 arrow function syntax for creating the components. But we have um, learned about creating components using function. Excuse me.
Do we have any milk? What's in the living room?
I'm sure they mute you. Khalid, I'm gonna mute you. So uh, we are going to use arrow functions for creating our component. And sorry, look at me. What? Let me get some water. And but in last class we created component using functions as well, so you can practice that as well. So let's create our component, and remembering from last class, the file name and the component name should be the same. And let's for now assume that the user or the player has won, the actual player who is playing the game has won. So let's display a happy message that player has won. So this is our component, that is basic component. Let's export this component. So now let's import the result component into our uh, um, app component. So we do import result from. So now we can't use just dot result because there is no file called dot result. So we have to actually give the relative path, which is inside from our app JSX perspective, app components perspective. The result component lies into the a parent direct, uh, not the parent directory, but sibling directory called components, and inside the component, uh, a file called result lives. And then once it's imported, let's just use it to display the result for now. See if we see any errors or not. We get the error. Hopefully not the same error. Did we make a mistake again? Or we did not save it? Did not save it probably. Yes, player has won. So uh, now we have this created. Now let's first learn about how to deal with the events, which are DOM events. So there are several DOM events that different kinds of HTML elements pass. And I'm sorry, I need to mute somebody. Yeah, sorry. So, so there are several events that several DOM elements pass. So let's search if we can find HTML events. So, uh, so there are several JavaScript events that different elements pass. For example, button has an event called on click. If you had a input um, button, it would be input tag. It would be having an on change event. More on more stuff like that. Like button has a mouse over event. It has mouse out event. So I advise you guys to learn more about the events. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. Um, but depending upon the kind of element you're using, for example, HTML, you can search HTML input events, because you will be, if once you're dealing with the form, uh, you will be dealing with inputs as well, more in detail. So you will be actually referring back to this uh, pages again and again. Uh, but for in case of React, there is a unique way to pass those events. So to learn about the events more, let's go to our app.jsx and let's create a simple button button element, and let's give a name to this button, sample button. Let's see if our button is here. So we have a sample button on our page, which has a blue outline, and that is coming from. So before I jump quickly to the button. You guys are familiar with CSS, right? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in a React component, this is how you can import CSS. You create your CSS file uh, for that component adjacent to that
Vic's the one unmuted right now.
Написав Пітер нам, написали, що
who is unmuted.
Майк знайшов. Де знайшов? Тебе в кармані, блядь, поб'ю.
So you can import your CSS files like this, just like you import your component, but you do not need to actually give any name because there is no named export. All you need to do is just give the file name and it's going to be present here. So we are going to see this in use very soon in this class itself. But as I was talking about events, so if you go to HTML button event in W3 School, you see that button has a on click event. So in React world, the same thing can be uh, done like this. So on click. So first word, the second word's first word becomes capital, first character of the second word. So C becomes capital. So let's say if it was on change, you would see on change and the C would be in the change will be capital. And then if you see here, uh, it's expecting us to provide something. And what is that? So this is where we tell our component what to do when this button is clicked. So let's say we want to, for now, this will take a function argument. So let's create that function. We are going to see on click handler. So it's always a good practice to have a name like this, which distinctly identifies that this is a function which handles uh, a non-click from a button. And let's for now console log something. So let's say console log hi. Now we have, as soon as I click on the button, I'll do it again. As soon as I click on the button, a hi is printed on console. So in this manner, a, a hi or a function that is printing on console hi is being called on an event that is triggered by a button element. So this is how we handle events in the React world. In the previous lectures, we have seen how to display something to HTML in React world. Let's say this hello world could have been, so I want you guys to clearly understand the difference here. Let's say this was a message, hello world was a message. Then we could display something in the UI using just message. And in this lecture, what we have done is we have received something from UI. So currently, this hello world is displayed from JavaScript to HTML. Now we are taking an event that is taking a data out of our component, or handling an event from our HTML node and acting upon it. So to make this clear, right? There is something called a state in React, and what is a state is it's for example, this message is a state for this component, and this message may or may not change. So for the state is like their characteristics, the React components characteristics that may or may not change. So for now, we are saying that this message does not change. But we have something called React hooks, which we will cover in detail in future lectures. But useState is one of the React hooks which allows you to modify the state of a React component. So let's do this. Let's make our message state variable modifiable. To do that, we have to use some syntax, which is variable name and the function that is used for modifying this variable. So set message would be my function name, and then you do use state and then provide the initial value for the message state variable. So here we are saying is let to be explicit, message variable initial state. So we are seeing message variable initial state. Now we have ability to change this, and we can change this based on anything. In our case, for example, we can change the message variable using the event that is um, triggered by the clicking of a button. So here we can say message variable changed by button. And now, if you see when we refresh our application, initially we are seeing message variable initial state, and let's click on the button. And now we see the message variable changed by the button. Do you guys have any confusions on this? This is important. Otherwise, next step, we are going to start building our rock, paper, scissors game, and it will become quite challenging to follow it if you don't guys understand this concept.
Just a quick question. So basically, when you click the button, it becomes message variable changed by button, right? Like that's
Yes,
the change of the use state.
yes, that's a new value we assign to our state variable message.
And we do not refresh the page. correct?
Yeah, we do not need to refresh the page. You're correct.
Mhm.
Let me show it to you again. I'm not going to refresh. This is initial our page state. I'm not going to refresh it. I'm just simply going to click on the button, the sample button, and the message variable change by button message gets displayed because the message variables, which is our state variable, was modified inside our function, and that function ran because of click on the button. Did you guys understand? Any confusions? I can
In
repeat.
this case, set message, what is it? It's a function or method?
It's a function or method. And it's a method name that is defined by you as a developer. This could have been anything. So this could have been uh, Natalia function, It doesn't matter. The name doesn't matter. It's a good practice to give it a name like this. Um, it could have been anything, and it would still act the same way.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
But it's a good practice because tomorrow, if I'm a developer who is working in your team and I do not know what is this function doing, by just looking at the name that set message, the semantic of the function, I can deduce that this function's main job is to update the message state variable. So it's a best practice to do it like this, but it is not mandatory. That makes sense?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So any more questions? I'm happy to take. Otherwise, let's move on to building our actual game. So we already built one component that is necessary for our game. But before we build our game, understand one important aspect. Right now, we have a state variable that we are using in the same component, which is app component, and we have a click handler or a function which gets triggered on a click uh, from a button component that again is inside our uh, our what do you call this? Our main app.js component, app.jsx component. So in case of a rock paper scissors, uh, we have essentially three values. So let me copy those values because I don't want to uh, spend time on it. And these are the choices a user would have in this game. And user would select a button to the actual do the actual selection. Sorry. So to allow user to do these selections, we need three button components. Three buttons. One rock button, one paper button, and one scissor button. Now we could do it in the same component. We could like have it like this, uh, or if you remember, um, in the last lecture, we created components out of lists. So instead of doing this, let's create uh, uh, let's create a dedicated uh, button component, which will instead of rendering three times, we will use our list.map to create three buttons like this. So let's go to our component folder, and then while component folder is selected in the VS Code, you can hit new file and uh, create the new component inside the actual folder. So let's name it as what it really is, a button, you know. And as the best practices, uh, we are going to name our component same as button. Sorry. And let's return a simple button out of this. Uh, but let's remember from our class that we can pass something called properties to our uh, child component. So in this case, I want 3 buttons which have rock, paper, scissors name. So for that, what we can do is we can receive that name property of the button from the parent and name it as a button name, and display the button name as a variable here. That way, we don't need, as I showed, we do not need to create this button component again and again. Let's export this. From our from our um don't want that. Let's see. Let's import this in our app.jsx, and similarly how we imported the result button from component/button. And now let's delete this. So if you remember from our previous lecture, we have to do choices dot map and then choice. So that is individual choice, in our case rock or paper or scissor, and then we return our button. And remember, if on the button we gave a property name which is button name. So let's use that button name equal to choice. I'm missing a key thing here. Can anybody remember from our last class? Anyone? So if you guys do not recall, I'm missing a key property. Let me save this and we will see that error on our console in the React. You see, we have 3 button rock, paper, scissors here now. That is displayed by the actual our new button component. How can you verify actually when you're coding? Just maybe does something like this, change a value so that you know that you are not actually showing the hard-coded value, but showing from choices. But if you again look, each child in the list should have unique key property. So we are missing the key property, and as we saw in the last class, we can use the index, which may or may not be the ideal choice as somebody had mentioned. And if you do not see anything, maybe you can use index. But in our case, the choices values themselves are unique. So we can actually do that. In this way, we are providing unique key to the each of the element, and rock, paper, scissors is displayed. I created some helper CSS classes uh, to actually.
Just a quick question. Can you go back to the code? Like, is there a reason why okay, I actually I get it now. I was going to ask like why is it choices in line 9 and then choice for line 23, but I get it now. You're putting the
Yeah.
variable in. Okay, got it.
So this is again a free variable choice. That's a actually very good point, Khalid. I could have named this as Khalid and it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. Just like we could have named this
Yeah, yeah.
anything. We have to use it consistently across and it doesn't matter. But just to help our fellow developers, who look at our code, we use semantic names so that by just reading the code, they can understand the logic we are trying to implement. That's why variable names are more for you and not just fellow developers. After 2 months, once you're done building this game, you come back, you might forget as well that what code you wrote, and by using the semantic name, you could actually understand and recollect everything back. So that's about rendering our buttons. As I was saying, I created some uh, s- styles for us to so that our buttons can be made little bit nicer looking. So we can do is again, this might not be part of the immediate textbook content, but this is important. So I'm covering it. So you could do a button.css file here as we have app.js. And I'll provide this code again, so you do not guys need to copy it now. Uh, and I paste my code here and let's import this into our button. See if this import worked. And now I can use, so you can style React components, React HTML elements inside JSX by using either style, so that's inline styles, which we'll not cover right now, or you can actually create styles in classes and then provide the class name as the class you created. So for example, in our case, I created a class called rounded square buttons, and this class makes our buttons rounded and blue and square. Besides that, I want my button to be actually displaying not just the text, but some sort of variation as well of this rock, paper, scissors. So um, let's do that. Uh, I For that you can directly do this. You can use the operators as hey Chris, yes. Chris, go ahead and ask your question, Chris.
I have a question. I don't understand the premise of the game of rock, paper, scissors. So you're clicking on each button, and then is it supposed to be interactive?
Yes, it's going to be interactive. So do you understand the rock, paper, scissors game, right?
Yes, when you play it with someone else. So does
Yeah.
that mean like if I'm player one, I'm
Yes.
going
You're
to
going to play against the computer. So you're
Oh,
going
you're
to
playing
see that.
against the computer. Because
Yes.
technically, when you play rock, paper, scissors on 3, you don't show your hand. So I was just confused because you're showing your hand by pressing the button, you know?
Yeah. So you're going to see that this is going to be random. No matter what you select, a computer is going to make a random selection, and based on that, you're going to win. So we are going to see that very soon. So I created a class for each of those uh, buttons. So for example, I created button pepper. So what I can do is, instead of this, I can do is this this might, if you're not familiar with this kind of string concatenation, that might sound a little bit of advanced, but I would suggest you guys to learn a bit more about string concatenations in JavaScript. So if you see, as soon as I do that, My rock is red color, paper is green color, scissor is light blue color. So using this property, button name, I'm displaying the name rock, paper, scissor, as well as adding a unique class. For example, in this is button dash rock, button dash paper, and button dash scissor. And if you see in the right, you have for scissor, you have this color applied. So this is how you can use your passed in property in a multiple way inside a child component. Now that is one part, and going back to our original discussion, this is just like passing this message onto this P tag. We passed the button name detail to our button component. So this two, what we did right now is very similar. Instead of using a predefined P element, we use it our button element. Now let's do the other part, and this is where uh, it might get tricky. So you guys feel free to stop me and ask if you have any doubts. So let's create another function. We have the onClick handler from the button. Let's on the button, we pass another parameter, just like button name, onClick handler, and then onClick handler. Now again, this is semantically making them correct. But I'm going to show you very soon to reduce the confusion. But first, we receive that onClick handler here. And just like in the past we had did is on click of the button, I want to do onClick handler. So if I go back to our UI, and what did happen? You see, by clicking that button, let me do it again. By clicking the rock button, if you see the message variable initial state, that's get modified. Now, if you really look at this, right? If you look at the beauty of this, we clicked something inside the child component, and that updated the detail inside the parent component. Are you following this? This is very important concept. And this is going to be one that you are going to use over and over again during your React developer careers. So it's very critical that you guys understand this concept is doing something inside a child component impacted a state variable inside a parent component. Stop me and ask any questions if you have. I'm going to open the chat. Uh, if anybody has any questions. If not, let me, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just can you go back? So you're saying that clicking on something in the main app changes the
Yes, so let me
parent
read. So,
component.
yes. So
Okay.
button is our child component,
Uh-huh.
app component, app.jsx. And clicking on this button is changing something inside our parent component, which is app component. And that change is setting the message variable from initial state to change by button. Do you follow?
Yes.
Okay. So now another beauty is I'm naming it onClick handler as onClick handler. This is again um, a very semantic thing, but it is not enforced. What do I mean by that is this could have been my prop name, anything or anything. It could have been just it has to match one-on-one with your definition inside your um, your child component. So if I do this again, now it still behaves in the same way. But it is again advisable to use the same name at every place, um, so that your fellow developers, right, they do not get confused, or you do not get confused. More importantly, when you look at your own code after some time, you do not get confused. So keeping the naming consistent is probably one of the most important skills as a software developer, regardless of if you code in React or some other programming language. Uh, it will be important. So did we save this? Hi, Cherish. Yes, go ahead. Ask your question.
I think you bring up a very important issue of like naming conventions. So what's the best way to organize your files? Because if you look at your VS Code to the left, you only did a simple game and you already have like six to, your in your components, you're probably gonna have like 8 to 9 files. Do
More
you
than
suggest putting each TSX and CSS in a folder so everybody knows that it's a component that goes together?
yes. Ideally, Cherish, I'll tell you in a real world applications, you will not be creating your own styles like this. Uh, Usually, major companies and major projects, they have their own style library, like which is, let's say, Bootstrap, which is sort of primary blue color here, what we are using, or something called Tailwind. So, for example, the project I work at my place uses Tailwind CSS for styling the most of the components, and that we can cover it as in future sessions, because it's right now out of scope for this lecture. But yes, if you need to do, you have to do it like this. If you wanted to become more granular, right, you could have created another folder button and moved both of these files inside this, and that would give even more better structure to your folders. But right now we have a simple game, as you mentioned. That's why we are not doing it.
Yeah,
But
I
that's a very,
guess
very,
what I'm learning about React is that it's like having reading a book and then one page is on page 64 and you have to keep jumping, crisscrossing back and forth. So rather
yeah,
than CSS and HTMLs, you can read the code all in one page. So I think that's the tricky part that I'm having with React
yeah,
is like seeing this code here. Oh, what does this do? Okay, so I have to open this file, and then just trying to organize everything.
yes. So that can be that's a very good point, and it can be challenging it early on in the project to actually, because imagine we having 50, 60 components, right? You need to see a lot of files and lot of things. But unfortunately, that is the reality of large software, real world application software development, as you break your components into as smaller files and as smaller logic as possible, because you want to actually create the separation of concern as well. So for example, me and you are on a same team working on this rock paper scissors game, and I was working on button component and you were working on result feature. We do not want to step on each other's code. And that at that time having this kind of separation helps.
If I could
Plus,
add, sorry, if I could ask,
sorry,
is this what libraries are essentially for as well as like these components you
yes,
sort
so
of
a lot
get
of
from, yeah.
yes, you're very true. So there are several React-based libraries which give you this kind of pre-built components as well. So that's what they do. Yes, you are very right. And plus, once you break your components into smaller pieces, uh, one is separation of concern. We don't step on each other's code. Second, most important part is you're able to better test your application as well, which we are not covering right now. but once you go into real world, it becomes really critical as well, and we'll see it in future sessions. But that also becomes very critical. That's where having smaller components helps a lot. Um, so there are several benefits, and this is what the community and the enterprise applications have adopted while building their React components. So yeah, and it goes for same if you build your components using Vue or Angular. I be, Angular is the same way, you know. I mean, so mo any modern library you will go, you will see this breaking of entire application into smaller reusable components, you know. Now this button component we built, we were able to reuse it 3 times here, 1, 2, and 3. So that is one thing. And now let's see what we actually right now we are getting we are getting we are calling this function, and this function is a click handler. It can receive the actual event that was that triggered the on click. So let's log what this event is. This is going to be another important thing to learn is let's log what this event. So it's saying it's a synthetic event which is of type on click. And in many cases, you will see event.details or values, you know. So its detail is right now 1. Um, let's see what detail this provides. So it's there's not much difference because we are not doing anything. But let's change it. So we don't want just the uh, event, but we want to sort of pass the button name as well, which was triggered. So we want to exactly know which button was clicked in our code. Visually, we are able to see we are clicking rock or paper or scissor, but we want to know as well. So let's do it. So one way to do it is like this: is you button name. So you pass your button name, and let's see what we get in our event. Now instead of seeing something that was event, now we are actually getting our actual detail, you know, the rock or paper or scissor. So whatever button you click, we are getting it back as a value from our child component. So now we are ready for, now that we are able to receive our uh, actual detail from our child button component, we are ready to build our game logic. So in a game of a rock or paper or scissor, let's say um, user selects rock, then if computer selects uh, paper, I think paper cuts rock, right? So paper or rock wins. So, but for that, we need to have a, so this event, right, is a user choice. So let's create originally a state variable, something called const, just like how we create message, we can say user choice and set user choice. And initially user has not selected anything, so let's keep it as empty string. So we want to save what user choice was into state variable when this happens, when the click event happens. That means we can just simply say set user choice and then the event. And now we have saved our user selection in the user choice. And now similarly like user choice, let's do a computer choice. So computer choice. And what I do is usually I copy the previous value and put a set in front of it and just change it to save time. So we have to do a logic. So the logic here is what we are going to do in this game is we are going to create a random selection out of the three values. So let's make a constant set user. Don't know if I have it already somewhere here. Yes, to save the time, I already have that logic here. Oh, not probably no, I have not. So let's build it. That's okay, we can do that. I'll set computer choice, um, and we have to select a value out of the choices array, and we need an index. How do we find the index of which value to find? So constant index that we want to pick is uh, so something called math is a library that is the JavaScript provides math.random, and math.random. Let me see math.random. And if you don't remember, you can just always go here, math.random, select from 1 to 3. So we want to 0 to 3. So 0 to 2. And you can always go to first question. So you can see the thing math.random, math.floor, max minus min plus min. And y is, so what is our max and min? Let's see if this works. Max is our 2. So what is 2? 0, 1, and 2. 2 is our index of a of our array, and the 0 is the minimum index, and this 0. And let's not do this. Let's see if our index selection is working as expected. Otherwise, our game will not function. So let's console log our index. Clear this out. So we got index 1, index 2, index 0, 2, 2, 2. So our random selection is working. So let's pick this value that we just got and set our computer choice based on this index. So we are going to select this index and set as our computer choice. So user selects a value by clicking a button, and doing this logic, we are selecting. Let me remove the console log for clear understanding. We are setting a computer choice. Now our job is to find winner. So let's create another function, constant find winner equal to if the user choice. So if user selected a rock as well as computer selected rock, then we it's a we want to say it's a tie, and then we don't want to do any further processing. Now this is another part. So if I make mistake, somebody correct me if I put a wrong rule. So let's say user selected.
Would you use the else if? Because if equal, then that equals a tie. Else if
Yes, we can use else if. That's a very good point. I typically do like this so that it becomes easy to read. We could do else if as well, like she is mentioning, or we'll need a final else as well. So let's do it like this because, yeah, it doesn't hurt. There are some programming styles individually people um, like, and I am more into if I do not need to do the nesting of else ifs and ifs, right? Because if there are 20 such conditions, right, it becomes really hard. Either you use a switch case, or you use a else if, or you use a like if blocks, So that's something that uh, I prefer, and I have seen a lot of people in industry prefer as well, to not create too long of a nested else if block. But let's say if the user's choice was rock, I think we need to make, and then the computer choice was, so rock wins against what? Rock wins against uh, scissor, right? Or
Yeah,
yeah, rock,
scissors, then rock wins.
then rock wins, right? So if user selected rock, then the user won. But that's not the final condition. But let's just uh, user, or in case you win, in case user is us. Or let's say the other condition would be if the user selected scissor and the computer selected paper, right? So then also the user wins. Or if user selected paper and the computer selected row, which I have never understood how a paper can win against rock. So somebody should enlighten me. It's my childhood dilemma. How paper can win against rock?
Right.
Well, well, but
Well,
that
the paper covers the rock, so
yeah,
Yeah, what paper rock could cut paper. I mean, you think of it.
how can yeah? So well, make conversations. Otherwise, if none of this is true, that means the computer has won. We do not need to explicitly say that computer selected scissor and user selected choice. Computer wins. So let's see if our
or you
game
could say you lose.
uh, you lose.
Anyway,
That's sad. I would rather see computer win. So let's see. But we made a mistake. We never. So after doing setting of the messages, we need
is
to
there a
actually
way to
call out.
create an alert? So when
Yes.
you click on it, after actually, is there a way to make it where you do 3 times and after the third time
Yeah. So
you
all of that
declare a
is a,
winner?
yeah, that's a very good thing. And I think if you guys are not bored, then we can actually try coding that. But um, we can go on little longer and do that actually. That's a good idea. But for now, let's see if our logic works. So both selected rock, so you win. But let's print what computer is selecting. I don't want to just uh console.var log computer choice was, and let's remove this. So we see our logic with, I mean, whenever you build such logic, right, which is a little bit of complex code, uh, as my boss says, trust but verify. Trust that you did the right thing, but still verify with the test cases. So this is like you're testing your logic hypothesis that this is how the user and the computer wins. So in this case, user's choice was rock and computer's choice was rock. So we got a tie. Now in this case, user choice was rock, This is not good. And probably that's okay. So we need to actually uh, wait for this messages to be populated. And there's a cool way to do it, but let's see if this works. And if I remember, and for now, I'm going to just hold this uh, delay. For now, I'm going to do it in correct way. I would not suggest you guys to do it like this. I will share with you guys the correct way, but it's a bit of advanced concept. We are not going to touch it right now. So why this is happening is we are trying to find a winner before the this set user choice has populated properly. So let's give it a delay of like say a second before we actually do this. The rock user choice was Caesar. Why? What is happening? Hi. Did we make any mistakes? It's hard to look when this happens. Real call a function after set users set state or use state callback. So we'd have to do it like this. So actually we are going to use another hook called use effect. I did not want you guys to get into too much of a complex setting, but it's okay. We are building a game, so we want to do it right. So we use state is another hook which acts on a use effect is another hook which actually um, acts or runs some code when a state variable has changed, user choice. So let's do this. If our user choice is so initial value is going to be this one. So if our user choice is not equal to, so this we are getting a little bit of advanced complex to make our game run properly. And I hope you guys are not feeling overwhelmed by this. So if our user choice, so user has made a selection. If this is not empty, what does this denote? Let me put a comment. Is yes, user has made a selection. User has made a selection. Then I want to find. So we'll call our find winner function only when user choice updates. So we have a new user choice. So what happens then? So user choice was rock and pepper. And this is again pepper. But this will also create another issue is when we click twice, this will not happen. So that's why I didn't want to get into this complexities, but That's okay. We want to make our game run, so we can do this. So after user has made a selection, we are clearing the user selection. Yes, user selected rock and computer choice was scissor. User was rock and paper. Computer wins. So now we are you guys overwhelmed by this block? I did not want to cover use effect in this class, but apparently due to needing to make our game run properly, I need to cover it a little bit. But if you guys don't understand too detail about this code, do not get overwhelmed. I would suggest to read up on this and send a message on Slack to me if you need more help on understanding this. And I will share all of this code with all of you guys so you guys can actually see the game running. But now
Where would this code be shared to, if I could ask?
GitHub, you
No,
need
but
it
would it be
when?
linked in the chat or would it be somewhere else?
I will provide it in the Slack chat. Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
But I will provide it by tonight so you guys have this code to play with. But remember, we have this message, player has won.
Oh,
We are
so you'll
not,
send it to our GitHub?
this is the entire project, right? So I have to share it via the GitHub. This is not a single file, right? We are building the entire game logic here.
So you're gonna share your GitHub with us?
Yes, I am going to. Yes. So I know it's late for some of you. So if you go who wish to drop, feel free to drop. Otherwise, if you guys want to stick around, whoever wants to stick around, we can do few more adjustments so that our game looks a little bit more beautiful. So right now we have a constant message which is has player one, which is not updating based on this. So let's do this. Where are we displaying that player has? So it's a message. So let's remove this line and initially let the uh, game begin. So instead of console logging it, let's do this. Set message. It's a tie. So it's going to be the same thing. Same message. Or instead of console logging, we are going to store it in the display. So let's refresh our oh, player has fun is here. So where it's coming from? Oh, it's coming from our result. So result is the variable which is holding the let's remove this other message. So we had a component which is called result and it's displaying the static message. Instead of that, actually let's receive a property called result and message here and display this message. So initially we should see message equal to message. It's a tie. User's choice was rock and computer choice was rock. So we are saying let the game begin. And now user is presented with three choices, rock, paper, or scissors. So let's select a paper and you selected paper and computer selected rock and it displays you win. Now you win again. User choice was scissor and computer was pepper. So I think Cherish, you suggested the idea to have a three count, right? we can have that. So uh, it's going to be a little bit more involved. Again, it involves another concept in React, which I did not want to immediately touch, but now that we are into building this game, why not touch it, But you guys do not. So when I do this, right, you guys do not need to feel overwhelmed about some of the concepts that you may not necessarily find in your curriculum just yet, like use effect or the conditional rendering that I'm going to highlight now. Uh, and you do not need to overwhelm, okay? So
Can you go to the main and then render the message to the main?
which message?
Uh, the one about who's winning, because right now it's only showing in the console log. So if you go to the main.jsx file in your VS Code,
No, we are seeing whoever wins, we are seeing that is let the game begin, right? If you click on rock, it says computer win. So
oh,
now we are
okay.
seeing, or let me make it more explicit. Result is let me refresh. Result is let the game begin. Right now there is no game played. So now we click on pepper and the result is you win. Click on scissor, you win again. Click on rock, computer wins. And we are printing why the computer wins. We are printing our choices here. But we could actually do on the count of three. So how can we save that? So for that, we can introduce two more variables, which is, uh, yeah, I'm gonna quickly do something so that we do not need to, you guys don't need to get bored seeing me type. User win count. So we can save the actual number of time the user has won, and every time when we run here, it's a tie. There's nothing to update. But every time we come here, set user win count as as let's receive our user win. As just one plus one, plus one. And similarly, we can see when the computer wins, that computer win count is uh, computer win count plus one. And let's show it somewhere. So let's have another. Are we gonna? You can create another child component, but in the interest of time, I'm not doing it now. But I would suggest you guys actually refactor this and raise a pull request into my code that I'm going to provide to actually uh, actually do not have the duplicate code. So this is in the interest of time we are doing it, but this is not a good way to do it. Okay. Let's see if our logic runs. Okay. So rock is you win. Again, rock, it's a tie, so nothing gets updated. Is you win again. The computer is not going to win today. Wow. Finally, it wins after 5 times.
Hmm.
So we have this counter. Random choices. I should have paid lottery today, being a user. I had a good luck winning. So the jokes apart. Uh, as Cheers was mentioning, we show the result only if a win count is uh, greater than 3. So we can remove this set message here and actually start tapping on the so we have to do something like this again, use effect and watch for value changes for user win count. So this again advanced concept because we want to complete our game. We are doing this computer win count. Um, and we are going to watch on both the variables. If user win count equal to 3, uh, then let's set it that you win. Instead of just every time, only when the user win count is 3, we are going to set it. But once we set it, we want to reset our game as well. So we have to set the initial values for user win count to 0 and set computer win count to 0 as well. So now once 3 wins are achieved, we are uh, we are yeah. Actually, let's actually have this, Let's actually have this. You win this round. This round. Instead of else if computer win count is 3, right? The computer has won more 3 times. We can see that message computer wins the game. And then we reset our game. Did you guys follow this logic? Well, let's see this logic in action. It's a tie. It's a tie again. Let me select this. It's a tie again. What are the odds? Computer wins this round. So we get a computer wins. You win this round. Computer wins this round. And let's see if computer wins the game. The third time the computer wins the game. And we can optionally so let's play again. And let's game you win this round. It's a tie. Computer wins this round. It's a tie. It's a close game this time around. Oh, 2-2. Who wants to bet on computer versus user. I'll go user. It's a tie. So it's a very close game. It's a tie again. Third tie. Oh, the user wins. So this is how we can constructively uh, create a rock, paper, scissors game. The additional concept that we covered, couple of additional concepts we covered today because we wanted to have a complete game, was having use effect hook and styling your React components as well using CSS. I believe CSS will be easier for you guys to follow, but if you guys get confused about this or anything about this, I'm happy to create a session which is a group mentoring session, which is not our regular Wednesday session. So this is our rock paper scissors game with React components passing data from parent to child component and receiving the events back from child to parent components. So anybody has any confusions? I'll stop sharing so I can see you guys, whoever is in the class. But you guys, is it was that too overwhelming, or you guys were able to follow through the game?
There's a similar it's tic-tac-toe on the React dev website.
Yes, yes,
So it kind of reminded me of that as well.
yes, yes. Because it's easier if we do this kind of fun projects rather than just like doing simple HTML elements and displaying childs and parents. So I thought of coming up with this game, and I knew it's going to take a little longer in the class, but that's
So is this week 4 homework then? I'm sorry, I was a little behind on my homework submission, so I'm just trying to get back into the flow. Is this going to be week
yes,
4?
yes. I'm going to just 1 second. I'm taking a screenshot so I can know who attended the session today.
Got you.
Yes, I should be good. Just give me 1 second. I have everybody's name. Yes, yeah, it's a week 3, I believe, in the actual course. I'll send it exact week for you guys. I believe it's yes. Use effect hasn't been covered, but we are on the week 3. I covered use effect little bit today because we wanted to have a complete game. But you guys should still follow your homework, which is there, because it's a different kind of project that you're building there with the to-do list. So um, thanks, John. So to-do list is another project you build. So this is where we build small projects to enhance our learning, by trying to build something that is meaningful and enjoyable. So with that, I thank you guys for sticking around a little longer today. And it was a really heavy, it was a fun lecture today. And I'll post the link to the code uh, today and probably video by tomorrow. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.